So as if things weren't already confusing enough with what is going on with Spider-Man 4 in the MCU, the deal between Sony and Marvel Studios about how they want the story to be, all the confusion with what they did for the Venom 2 Let There Be Carnage post-credit scene, and then the Spider-Man No Way Home post-credit scene which seemingly negated what the Let There Be Carnage post-credit scene did. And on top of all of that confusion, we now have the Venom 3 The Last Dance trailer that has showed us a very confusing symbiote scene that seems to further negate those other post-credit scenes. So now fans are basically just going, what the heck is going on? Well, it seems like we have some pretty good news on that front today. And as it turns out, with the Venom The Last Dance trailer, it seems like Sony might be up to a little misdirection here, like they might be intentionally trying to confuse us, which is something that Sony would just never try to do, right? The reality is they have done this in the past. However, it was a little bit more, let's say, deceitful. I'm looking at you, Madam Web trailer that showed a lot of Spider-Woman in their costumes, well, a lot of the same footage, when in reality that was only about maybe 15 seconds of the entire movie. Them and their actual Spider-Woman outfits, that is. That was more deceitful though, and it sounds like what Sony is doing now is actually kind of for the greater good of trying to keep everything an actual secret. And of course, we'll get into it. Right now, it looks like two big things are happening for Spider-Man 4 in the MCU. Number one, we have plenty of reports telling us that Miles Morales is going to be in Spider-Man 4, and in fact, some new reports tell us that they might be casting the live-action Miles Morales right now. And two, the Venom symbiote is going to appear in Spider-Man 4 in the MCU. And according to a new report, which we'll break down, that also involves the directors of Spider-Man 4, apparently, the Venom The Last Dance trailer could be intentionally misleading us with that one particular symbiote scene. Which is honestly some pretty great news to hear, because that one scene doesn't really make sense, and it had us all wondering, what the heck is Sony doing? Well, it looks like they are planning for something to happen in the MCU. So we already knew that Marvel Studios and Sony were kind of clashing about how they wanted Spider-Man 4 to be, with Marvel Studios wanting it to be a grounded film, but Sony wanted it to be even bigger than Spider-Man No Way Home, with it being a very big multiversal film with a lot of different villains, and Venom was one of those rumored villains. Now, we do know that they have reached an agreement about what Spider-Man 4 is going to be, and it satisfies both of their wants and needs. So we are getting something that is in between. We're getting a grounded story that is going to have some multiversal elements to it, and insiders are still reporting that we are going to get Venom in the film. Insiders like My Time to Shine Hello have stated this, and Daniel RPK has recently stated this as well. A recent report from Daniel RPK says that Marvel Studios / Sony are very close to hiring a director for Spider-Man 4. The plan is for the symbiote to appear in the film. The Venom The Last Dance trailer likely showed a misdirect, which again, I'm really glad if that is true, because it just doesn't make any sense. In the Venom The Last Dance trailer, they showed us that bar scene, which we saw in Spider-Man No Way Home. In the Venom Let There Be Carnage scene, Venom and Eddie went to the MCU. We know this because Spider-Man, Tom Holland's Spider-Man, was on the TV and they were talking about the events of Spider-Man Far From Home. Then in the post-credit scene for Spider-Man No Way Home, we watched Eddie Brock and Venom sit at a bar in the MCU and go back to the Sony universe, but they left a piece of the Venom symbiote behind in the MCU. So when we see in the trailer Chiwetel Ejiofor's or Will Taylor looking at the Venom symbiote, capturing it in that very same bar in the Venom universe, that doesn't make any sense. And fans were pretty pissed because it seemed like at the time the only logical explanation was that they are simply going to retcon this and not have Venom in the MCU. However, now it's looking like this is actually trying to do the opposite. It could be trying to cover up the fact that they still do have plans for the symbiote in the MCU, and it might be Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock, Tom Hardy's Venom that is going to enter the MCU. All we've really heard so far is that this is going to be Tom Hardy's final solo Venom film. We haven't heard that Tom Hardy is done playing Venom altogether in general, but we've even heard insider reports stating that we will eventually see Tom Hardy's Venom and Tom Holland's Spider-Man face off against each other, and that Marvel Studios does want Tom Hardy's Venom in the MCU for Avengers Secret Wars. And of course they would. Why wouldn't they? It makes perfect sense. It's a multiverse, so it's a very convenient and easy way to bring him into the MCU, and they know that fans want this. And it sounds like the probability of this happening is getting better, because we heard a couple of weeks ago from the insider Cryptic HD Quality that Sony and Marvel were talking, and Marvel Studios wanted Miguel O'Hara in the MCU to form an alliance with Kang. This report says that Sony originally rejected this idea, but they have heard that Miguel O'Hara is still on the table, and that there's a great possibility that he could make a live-action debut in the near future with a new team. Now, what this tells us is that Sony and Marvel Studios are talking about all of the characters that they want in the MCU for the multiverse saga. And based off of these reports we're hearing from Daniel RPK and My Time to Shine Hello and other insiders as well, it sounds like Venom is one of those characters they want in the MCU, and perhaps they have done something in Venom: The Last Dance to actually and finally make that happen. But some of the trailer might be intentionally misleading us, maybe some fake scenes thrown in there. We're used to that basically happening by now with Marvel Studios, and since they do work together with the Spider-Man films, perhaps Kevin Feige said, hey look, why don't you just kind of mislead people a little bit like we kind of do with our trailers, just to throw them off a little bit. That way at the end of Venom: The Last Dance, fans will be super surprised and excited. At least I hope that's what's going on, and according to Daniel RPK, that's what he believes is happening. However, I won't hold my breath because I know how Sony is, and you never really know with them. However, it does sound like they are willing to work with Marvel Studios over certain characters for the multiverse saga, which is great. Now, like I mentioned, they also are seemingly casting for a live-action Miles Morales right now, and this is coming from insider Jeff Snyder. And this is kind of an interesting one because Sony is going to allow a Miles Morales to enter the MCU. We've heard many reports that that is going to happen, plus not to mention they did set that up in Spider-Man Homecoming. Donald Glover, aka the Childish Gambino, did show up as Aaron Davis, aka the Prowler, who is the uncle of Miles Morales, and he mentioned his nephew. So Miles exists in the MCU, and they have predetermined that, which means they have an agreement with Sony that Miles can eventually come into the MCU. Now, of course, things could have changed since then because we do know that they have renegotiated the Spider-Man contract since then, but Sony has made it very clear that they are making a live-action Miles Morales. Now, hopefully it's him in the MCU and not Sony trying to attempt to do a solo Miles Morales film in live action, since they do the Spider-Verse movies right now. And they have been successful with them, but I think a lot of people attribute that to Christopher Miller and Phil Lord. So hopefully, when they are talking about a live action Miles Morales, we are talking about a live action Miles Morales in the MCU. And this does make sense considering after 3 more solo Spider-Man films, Tom Holland should be done as Spider-Man. So his Peter Parker should start now mentoring Miles Morales to become the new Spider-Man for when he is gone. So hopefully 2 really big things are happening in Spider-Man 4. Miles Morales will enter the MCU, and the Venom symbiote will be a part of the MCU as well. Some people, some insiders, have even reported that Peter Parker might die, and it's the symbiote that revives him. And that's why he would be wearing the symbiote in Avengers Secret Wars, because he believes the symbiote to be good. How will it work with Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock? Who knows? But of course, we do know that he left a piece of the Venom symbiote behind, so we might even have, at some point in time, 2 Venoms in the MCU. But go ahead and let me know your thoughts about all of this in the comments down below. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date on all things with the MCU and, of course, the Sony Spider-Verse. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.